Play League of Legends, like there's the whole map. You can see it there. Basically, when you play League and you have a lane feeding, what you want to do is, oh wait, I should probably start with the.
You should probably introduce yourself first.
Okay. Sorry, I just got right into it. Okay, hey, I'm Naeed, Arms of Silver Diaz. I'm a Master Tier support player. I play on the UNT team here. I'm also the shot caller for the team. I do a lot of the theory crafting, analyst, team comp, stuff like that. I do coaching on the side. It's $10 an hour. You can check out my stream, twitch.tv/Arms of Silver. Follow me, do it now, like on your phones. I won't care.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Money somehow. Alright. I stream kind of often, not too much anymore, because of a job. You get what I'm saying? Alright. Anyways, we're gonna start. So when you play League of Legends, generally the map is divided into two halves. There's two different ways it can be divided. Generally, it's divided along river. But the better way to divide the map is among mid lane. So basically the advantage you have to dividing it above mid lane is if you have one lane feeding or someone's terribly behind, or even if you're all behind, you're able to control one area of the map without necessarily giving up anything, or you give up less. Because if you divide it among river, like that area should always be in your control, and if it's not, like there's nothing you can do about it. But if you divide it on mid lane, when someone takes an advantage on the other half of that map, you're able to take an advantage elsewhere. So basically, wow, this picture's significantly smaller. Sorry about that. First time using Photoshop, by the way. So basically, there are three outer towers. And basically what you want to do is the map's opened up whenever any of the outer towers are taken, no matter at which point in the game. So even if you're behind, you want to try to grab one tower and secure it, because it opens up so much of the map for you. When you take a tower, if you take, for example, if you take the bot lane tower, this area of the map opens up for you, and suddenly this whole area of the map becomes hard to farm. Same thing for top, it's just mirrored. And basically what you want to do is by taking a tower, you're able to open up more of the map. And by opening up more of the map, it allows you to have more room for plays, deep wards. It also allows them to mess up more. Basically, the more of the map you have control, the more they can mess up. When you have control of bot, let's say your top's feeding and you lose your top tower, suddenly they have that area of control, of the top side of your jungle, but you still have control. So what you try to do is you try to match it. So you try to take your bot lane control. So you have two options here. Either the enemy laner is going to freeze at their tower and they're going to only be farming, then they can't leave. Because if you're freezing and you leave the lane, it just fucks you over. So basically what you want to do is if your enemy's laner is freezing, you want to rotate to your next easiest tower. And this is the biggest thing about League. Even if your laner's behind, like someone can be 0 and 5, you can still win by rotating to your next easiest tower. So basically the way you know which tower is easiest, you can generally let's assume you're top, you take your top tower, you can look around, you can either look mid or bot. You see which tower is either the lowest or which lane's the least behind. Sometimes the most behind depending on comp. Basically what you want to do is you want to rotate down to that lane. You want to shove up your lane to where either they have to freeze it or they have to push it back. If they have to push back when you push it up, they have to either push back 2 or 3 waves. And that's like time that gives you, that you can roam and do whatever you want. But you have to make something happen. That's why roams are big. So basically, after you take your top and you push up, you want to look for the next easiest. Generally, bot's the easiest, because bot laners generally don't have as high wave clear as, say, mid laners. A lot of mid laners have really good clear. Also, mid lane's the easiest part of the map to rotate to, since it's the shortest lane. So generally, you're going to want to look bot. And so when you look bot, you have two options. You can either take Dragon, which is generally a good option, but not the best, or you can take the tower. So basically what you want to do is you want to tell your jungler or your mid, or both even, it's like, hey, I'm going to roam bot, let's try to take the turret, let's go together, and we can either dive if they're alone, or just try to siege for the tower, or team fight at Dragon. So even if you're behind, let's assume like the top laner's fed it, and your top laner goes bot. So basically what you do is they have to either, you have two options, the top laner has to either stay and farm, and what that does is it keeps the disadvantage away. So when you're playing, you want to keep the disadvantage you have, or the most fed person, as far away from you as possible. You generally either want them to be like split, or you want them to stay, or you want them to like get there late. So basically what you do is if like you call this early, you're able to take your advantage, go bot, you're either going to take a tower, take a dragon, and then immediately back off. You don't want to overstay. Overstaying is the big thing. Because if you overstay, that top laner is going to get a higher advantage, and it's not going to be worth the trade you get. So you want to leave immediately, because if you overstay, that either two things are going to happen. Top laner is going to stay, take the turret, keep pushing, and you're just going to fuck yourself over. Or they're going to come down late, either with TP or walking down, and then ace you because that's their biggest advantage. Same thing for bot. If they're the biggest advantage, you want to stay away. You can do Rift Herald. It's just pretty much like, this thing of the map is opposite. So you can take Rift or you can take top tower. If you're the bot lane that's ahead, it's generally a lot better than the top or the mid. Because the bot lane, you're the fastest tower pusher. You're also your support can also roam with you. So basically, if you're the bot laner, you're gonna want to roam up, take the top tower, dive it, take Rift either, just whichever you think is easier. It's kind of hard to tell. That comes with experience. It's really hard to tell like right away. And I don't know what this one is. Okay, that's that later. Okay, so that's generally how you want to push your advantage. And after that, like which gen you want to either, you have two options here. That's just, once two towers are down, either top bot. Generally, it's always gonna be top and bot that go down. It's rarely ever mid, unless the mid laner is losing heavily, and you get like a couple dragons, or you try to. Like the biggest thing is just keeping. It's either keeping their top lane, the most fed person, from continuing to farm, or like force them to come. Because like generally, like how many times have you like tried to like do an objective, and like the person who's fed doesn't come, and like your team just like rages at them. It's like, yo, why didn't you come? It's like, and just tilts them. That's also a big thing's mentality. So like by forcing them to have to make an action instead of just like keep doing what they're doing, it can either like make their team angry at them, which tilts people, and that like in solo queue that's like a pretty big thing. I'm not sure if it matters too much in teams, maybe in lower elos. Most people stay pretty calm and composed in terms of fives. There's very few times anyone just like rages out or anything. After that, you want to start looking for you start playing the game at this point, like if you're behind, like for the next easiest tower. So at that point, the next easiest tower would be mid, because it's the closest tower to you. You already have bot, you have top. There's ways to set that up, but that's like, that would take forever to go into. But basically just know you want to have your wave either even or slow pushing. That's something you kind of have to learn to do on your own, or like another lesson that'd be like, because slow pushing is a big thing on its own. So basically you want to set up to get mid, you want to get, since you have control now of these sides, you want to try to get wards. You don't have to go too deep. You can generally just ward entry points, and set up pinks in your defensive lines, which would be like along river. And you want to set up wards over here, because you want to know if like they come from there, the frozen points that walk down. And generally once you have these two towers, and you go middle, at this point, unless their mid's a heavy wave clear mid laner, like let's say Victor or Nivea, you can generally out-siege them at this point. Because you have control of both lanes, there's missing their towers, and so the waves are going to push to their direction eventually, assuming you don't set them up in any sort of way. If you set them up, it's great, but if you don't know how to or are unsure, that's kind of difficult. But eventually it will push their way. So you can group middle, or you can group as 4 middle, and have your weakest laner farm either bot or top, whichever's like closer to you, because that gives them time to catch back up. And while generally, in lower elos especially, as soon as they see 4 people mid, they send all 5 people mid. People don't like the split push generally in lower elos, up until like maybe even mid diamond. People don't know how to play the map correctly. And so if you're, generally that's what you want to do. You generally don't need that 5th person to siege mid, unless you absolutely want it or plan on taking dragon or rift, because they can just be freezing bottom or pushing it up. And by the time once it gets like a little, and you call out, and basically the reason why you want the wards in river is because you want to know when they're coming down. And so basically this person would be pushing while you're sieging middle. They'll have 5 middle. This person's soaking XP and gold while they have 5 people sharing XP compared to just 4. And over time, they can lose a huge lead. Like let's say the AD carry's up 120 CS. If you have your AD carry that's like 80 down here, after like 5 waves, he'll catch back up and he'll actually be ahead in terms of XP. So generally that's what you want to do. AD carry, your top laner. Generally you don't want to send your mid laner. Generally you want to send your person with the lowest wave clear, and generally mids typically have that. So that's why you don't want to send like generally like a Victor or a Nivea down bot. You want to keep the middle and then have like your AD carry, your top, which don't really have the best wave clear, down to bot or top, depending on which is pushed further closer to you, because it's just safest. Also the most farm, because creep waves have to travel down. So like more creep waves can build up. So generally that's what you want to do. And that's how and then you want to take, and so like let's assume you take middle. After you gain towers, like after you take the initial line, it's all about wards and vision and how you play it at this point. I didn't really make an image for that because it took me forever to figure out how to even get these circles on there. So basically I'll try to point them out, but once you take these towers, you want to start pushing up for wards, but you want to do that as a team. In solo queue it's a little more difficult. You can always ask. Generally they will listen if you let them know beforehand. Generally you want to ward way up there, I'm not tall enough. But you want to ward entry points into the jungles, like there, like the entrance is to red buff, entrance is to blue. And the reason you do this is because it lets you know like when they're coming to this area, or that area up top too as well, where like you want to siege. And if you're trying to do something like Dragon or Baron, it lets you know right away where they're at. So like hey, they're coming down right now. Like we either like decide earlier to turn or decide to finish the dragon and just leave and ditch. Because if like you don't have also, if you have vision, generally vision means they don't have vision generally, because if you're able to push up your wards deep enough, generally you can see where they're warding, and that's a really good thing. A really good thing to keep track of. And so if you have vision, you know where their vision is, and you can play around that. Like face checking a dragon, like with no vision, is like a really huge way to lose a game. So basically, you want to take your next, and then after that, you just keep going for next easiest tower. Mid's generally always the hardest to siege, even though teams tend to go mid a lot. It's generally the hardest to siege because it's just the easiest point for everyone to get on the map to. So like, let's say after your person who's behind's caught up, you're gonna want to go to bot tower or top tower. It's easiest to set up vision. For mid, you have to set up vision on both sides, your left and your right. But for this, you only have one side you have to worry about. There's only one real entrance, and that's here. If you ward this spot, you'll know if they're ever gonna flank you, because no one's gonna walk all the way around. They might, but it's very unlikely, because your creep waves are gonna see them at some point. So if you ward this spot or that spot top, you know exactly if you're gonna get flanked. And having that vision is so important, because there are many champions that have to flank to fight properly. Even though Lorio's, most people don't do it, still denying that possibility at all is so helpful, because generally you want to team fight in one direction. Always in one direction, because it's just simpler. You don't want to try to make things complicated unless your team comp wants it, but generally the engagers want the flank rather than the defenders, in a way. So you're gonna like try to whittle down the tower. Once again, you'd slow push either top, not really mid. Mid's kind of weird to slow push because it's always gonna get cleared. So you'd slow push the opposite lane, and while you're here, that creep wave's gonna be building up. And as that creep wave builds, you're gonna be here. And basically what you want to do is you want to pressure, but not as hard. But as that creep wave builds and builds and builds, what slow pushing do is the creep wave significantly gets bigger on each wave as it slowly pushes up towards the other tower. And so by the time the creep wave reaches that tower you're trying to defend, it's like a huge 20 to 25 CS creeps. And so while you're down here, that's when you want to start pressuring harder for the tower, like either threatening a dive, like threatening you don't necessarily have to, or because that wave of 20 creeps, if they miss that, they lose so much compared to you, because you get tower damage. The wave's gonna be even, so like they can't farm it, and then they're gonna miss out on 20 to 25 creeps, and you're all here together. And so basically, someone's gonna want to farm that wave. At that point, that's when you would dive, and you can do that. And you can do that on both sides. Like I said, the game's pretty much mirrored. So like it'd be the same thing top. You'd slow push bot. Same thing when someone goes to clear that wave, you pressure for that either for the tower, you pressure for the dive. I highlighted like common throw points if you're like really far behind in a game. Basically, if you're behind, you don't necessarily have to keep fighting until something goes, because generally if you just keep farming, like you can be down like 20 kills, as long as you keep farming, they'll eventually mess up. Like the amount of games I've lost, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have lost, like with like, let's say you're like really far ahead, and someone decides to dive the inhibitor turret, and then you get aced, and the enemy team comes back, gets Baron, you just lose. Especially with Baron too, that happens a lot. That happens so often, it's crazy. So generally what you want to do is these points are where like you want to start, when you want to start fighting and not just start farming. So if you're really far behind, you wait for them to try to siege your inhibitor. Like there's a lot of champions that have like pick skill shots, Morgana, Lux, Blitzcrank, Anivia, anyone with like any like long range CC. And basically this point, it's like such a small point on the map. Like compared to like this, like there's still areas you can move, but like this, like it's the smallest, like these points are so small, that's easier to land your skill shots. They can't, for example, a lot of people like to like hug the walls and not really coming towards the middle. So you have the creep wave here, so that's blocking them. You have, and then this wall here. So they can only realistically juke up or here juke down. And so basically it just makes it easier to land your skills. So instead of like trying to defend this turret, where you can get flanked on multiple ends, you generally will like give this one up if you don't have the proper wave clear, or if it's low, to try to force a fight here. Because generally, especially in lower elos, they'll try to press too much. And so what you'll want to do is save your pick skills, wait for them to come here, and then try to get one. You can always hope for the enemy team to dive too. Like, it doesn't have to be when the tower's full, but a lot of the times they'll dive like just for no reason. And they'll just go like dive on you, and you can turn around a team fight that way. Because if you keep farming and just play your advantage, an inhibitor turn's worth about like, depending on how many minutes in the game, it can be worth over like 10 kills, depending on who tanks it first. So you want to use your like I said, save your pick skills, your CC, for the person that dives. Because you want to make sure they die right away. That eliminates such a huge advantage, because that's all a lot of XP and gold they have on them. And so you're going to want to do that. Same thing for mid, same thing for top. Baron's kind of the biggest throw point in the game. Like, a lot of teams do not know how to play Baron properly. There's very few teams that can. Off the top of my head, I say Cloud9 and Rox Tigers both play Baron like extremely well. And that's generally how they win a lot of their games. So Baron's kind of weird, where like, if you don't... Baron's never really, like... How do I put this? If you don't have to do Baron, you shouldn't. But knowing when to do Baron is such a great thing. There's probably more games there's more games you could potentially win doing a Baron than you'd lose if you know how to do it right. So Baron's kind of like a weird like 50-50, depending on your junglers. But there's a lot of things you can do to negate that, but that'd be like a separate thing completely on its own. So we're just gonna go over a couple points. When an enemy team's ahead, generally they'll go for risky Barons. So what you wanna do is, a lot of team comps have a lot of trouble sieging these inner turrets. Like, they can be trying and trying forever, but if you have enough clear, they just won't be able to. So what you want to do is make sure you have a couple blue trinkets. Generally it's your AD carry, sometimes your support, and sometimes your mid, but you want to have at least 2 in my opinion. 1's great, but I think 2's really low. And basically you want to have at least 2, and so generally you want them to like get frustrated. Like, they get really antsy if they can't end the game when they're ahead, because they're like, hey, we're up 20 kills, we can't even take this tower. So what you want to do is wait for them to try to go for it. And basically, you'd like ward your way, like, if you're behind. So what you do is you'd wait, you'd blue trinket from max range, like in the back of the pit, and like if they're like starting it, then you can walk up. But if not, you generally kind of like ease your way in, and like, for example, like you walk up, ward this bush, go to the side of this wall, ward that bush, because a lot of times teams could bait it and ward you out, but every second the game goes on when you're behind is better for you, because eventually the strongest person's gonna get 6 full items, and at that point any gold they get doesn't matter. So the longer the game goes on, the easier it is for you to come back. So like, you want to try to stall. So like, even if they attempt to do the Baron and they don't get anything, the longer the game goes on, it gives you more time to come back. And so basically, and then Baron can be a throw point as well, because unless they have like a huge tank, and even if they do, it's still not enough sometimes, Baron can, like, with Baron fighting with you, you generally win almost every fight. So basically, you want to try to play that to your advantage. So, an enemy team, you want to wait for them to start the Baron, you want to try to get vision of it, and you want to go when Baron's around like 5 or 10k HP, because you want to just, like, if you go in right away when Baron's like 10k, or like 9k, 8k, generally teams will just back off of it. They won't try to finish it, but you want to try to get into that point. It's solo queue, and even in team games, like, communication's not the easiest thing. We're not like all linked together. It's like a separate mentality for everyone. So you want to try to get at that point to where it's like, hey, I think I can finish this, or hey, I think we should turn. So there's that split. It's also, like I said, League of Legends is a mental game, so if you can get that split, it's like even more confusion. Let's say like 2 people stay on Baron and 3 go to fight you, that's a 1 fight. If they split on the decision, it's pretty much a 1 fight. So you want to wait till it's like 5, maybe 4k. 4k is a little risky, depending on how fast they're DPSing. I say like 5k is generally a safe number. And you want to try to get in, and when you enter a fight in Baron, you want to make sure that you're always staying on the side that's not closest to Baron to make sure Baron's hitting them. Like, even if you're playing something like a Maokai and you dive in, like the second you W in, you want to walk backwards and make sure Baron's hitting one of them and not you. Because that can happen a lot where teams try to fight at Baron, but then their member gets closest to Baron and then Baron targets them. That's a big way to lose a huge advantage you have. So you want to make sure you're staying on the side furthest away from Baron. And if you have skills that can keep him closer to Baron, that's great. That's why Trundle support is like, and Trundle like top, we're so good at turning around Baron fights, because they just pillar on the pit and they force the fight. The enemy team would have nowhere to run. They were forced to flash over the wall. And so basically what you want to do is fight there, and because it's like the biggest advantage you'll have. You can generally win from behind, and after you take Baron, like like Baron either buys you another like 3 to 5 minutes of game time that you can play, or you can shove up that way. And I think that's it for the pictures. And I'm going to show you guys a game where I personally feed.
Intentionally, right?
Yeah, it was just
for the video, or for the lesson.
Yeah, it was for the lesson, yeah. Sorry, the quality's kind of crappy. It was from a patch ago, and since the little replay's kind of lame, I had to just get it off my VOD on my stream. So you're gonna see in the beginning here, We decided to. Oh, wait, I should probably make this full screen before that triggers people. Oh, that's my stream. Look at how cute I am. You can see it right there.